Heyo people! Sometimes when I livestream, I pick up my controller and lock in for dungeons because it's comfy and I like using it. And inevitably, people will be like, "Whoa, how are you playing with a controller? Tutorial when?" And in my live streams, I have explained how it works really quickly, but it's about time I did make a video about it, I think. And fair warning, this is janky. It works, but I can't completely abandon the keyboard and mouse. It still has to be in reach for occasional use. But I do love just sitting back and crushing dungeons without having my hand on the mouse. Which is good, considering how much time I spend at a PC for both work and play. Aura Kingdom does not support controllers natively, though apparently the Japanese version was on a console at some point. Honestly, the Aura Kingdom keybind settings are a little lacking in general. It only registers normal keys, so if you want to use any kind of non-standard mouse or extra keyboard keys, the first step is to change the key or button to something that Aura Kingdom can register. And I'll take a moment here to say that my keyboard is very non-standard, and I run into trouble with it all the time in Aura Kingdom. The software for my keyboard, Basecore, uses modifiers to change the function of a key whether it's held or tapped. Aura Kingdom doesn't register the tap functions properly, which is annoying because the main one is for the enter key, so I ended up rebinding another key to enter on its own instead. But it still doesn't register the hold key until it's been held the proper amount of time too. This isn't an issue with Basecore, it's definitely just its interaction with Aura Kingdom, as it works perfectly well with any other game or program I use. Now, I know this isn't specifically about using a controller, I just felt that it might be helpful to know if you're trying to do any crazy setups with non-standard keyboards or trying to do workarounds so you don't have to reach as many keys. Back to controllers then. Your main aim is to rebind your controller's buttons to normal keyboard keys. There are a few ways you can achieve this, I'm sure, and your options might depend on your controller. Personally, I use an old, wired USB PlayStation 3 controller made by HoriPad. It's got no rumble, no lights, no battery, nothing but lightweight, comfy gaming for me. This should also give you a picture of what buttons I'm working with here. Also, it's beautiful, isn't it? Hashtag not sponsored. Then, personally, I use Antimicro as my rebinding tool. As a fair warning, when I first started using Antimicro, I read in forums that some games register Antimicro as cheating, or might trigger anti-cheat software. I don't see anything about it recently when I Google it, but if you're concerned, make sure it's only open when you're using it for Aura Kingdom. And if that does concern you, I'm sure some fancy controllers might come with proprietary software you can use, and I understand Windows has rebinding software for Xbox controllers, which I've never used, so your mileage may vary. Alternatively, if you load Aura Kingdom into Steam, you can use the Steam controller interface, which I'm not super familiar with, and the reason I do not use it is twofold. Number one, I don't want to launch Steam to play Aura Kingdom and have it track my hours. No siree, that is info I don't need. And two, when I was trying to set it up, it just wanted to register as a normal controller, and I personally couldn't figure out how to turn it into a keyboard. Remember, Aura Kingdom doesn't talk to controllers, it only talks to keyboards, so we need it to hear a keyboard when we play. Because every program for driving the controller will handle it differently, next I'm going to talk about the layout I use and the issues I faced getting it started. Then at the end I'll show you how to set up Antimicro specifically, as it's not really just plug and play. Here's the key points. Character movement is done with the left stick. The up and down axis registers as the up and down arrow keys, while the left and right axis is registered as strafe, A and D from WASD. Up and down and the W and S from Lost are the same and can be swapped, but left and right with arrow keys moves and turns the camera, which results in awkward control in my opinion. Stick with strafe. Instead, to control the camera, we're going to use the right stick. The right stick left axis is bound to the turn right and left in the character bind section. I adjusted mine to numpad 1 and 3, and I don't remember what the defaults are. So just make sure you bind it to whatever it is on your setup. The up and down axis is a little harder, as there is no key option for changing the vertical angle. My workaround is I have it set to move the mouse and click down when the tilt reaches a large enough angle, and let go as I release it. It's probably the jankiest setting, and because I do not like to lock my skill bar, I occasionally drag a skill off of it if I'm not paying attention. I have no setting for zoom distance. You cannot rebind zoom in the game, it is stuck to a scroll wheel. If your controller has more buttons, you could easily bind some to scroll up and down, but I don't. So I just zoom out when I log in and don't ever zoom back in. Next up, mouse control. You just need a mouse sometimes, like when entering dungeons or accepting teleports. I don't recommend using a controller when you're doing something like selling items to NPCs, but just having some basic slow mouse control is a must. So the D-pad on my controller is the mouse. Left click is select, and right click is start. And now we're into combat. First up, jump and tab. You'll be using these a lot, especially if you're jump casting. So L1 is space for jump, and L2 is tab for target. When playing as a ranged class and running between mobs, it is super comfy, and you get used to hitting both at once to quickly hit and swap targets to gather up all the mobs till you hit a boss, and then once you've got them targeted, you can stop tabbing and just jump cast. Frankly, I find jump casting a million times easier on a controller too. But you can't do damage without skills, so that's next. I have the X, circle, square, and triangle buttons bound to 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that order. That gives you your first 4 skill bar slots. Next, I've got R1 as control, which you can then pair with them for 4 more skills. We're up to 8. For the remaining buttons, it's now your choice on what you find helpful. For example, R2. I would highly recommend not using Alt, because you can very easily accidentally Alt-tab out of the game. But you could use Shift here for 4 more skills. Or, recently I was thinking Escape might be nice for cancelling target or getting out of cutscenes. Personally, I use it for another skill on its own. And if you're looking at my layout exactly here, you'll need to take a closer look at my skill bar too, where you will notice some oddities. Like the control line having Q and E, and tilde up there in the corner rebound to my skills. I made that choice because I can't reach the control key and skills at the same time. I don't want to have to move around my bindings every time I switch from keyboard to controller, but at the same time I highly recommend not binding combos of keys to a single controller button either, because when you start hitting too many keys at once, you can start getting really unpleasant interactions, especially with Alt. So for me, R2 is E, and I tend to put my mastery skill there on most classes. Then I use R3 for the tilde, which is where I put valid on all my sub-bard characters, and L3 is Q, which I use for a skill that isn't needed very often as I find it a little uncomfortable to hit. For example, this is where I put Meteoric Arrow, which has a 30-second cooldown. Then the final key, the PlayStation button, is rebound to F, the interact key. You can use it to talk to NPCs, advance conversations, pick stuff up. It's especially nice when you're doing stuff like the main quest. One small warning is that if you have Steam open, it has a tendency to actually reopen Steam as well, so I usually keep Steam closed. Now, I wouldn't say there's a wrong way to set up the keys, I just found that this works for me without breaking the way I play normally on my keyboard and having to change stuff every time I change input. I think the mouse would be better controlled by a stick over a D-pad because you could control acceleration based on the angle, but personally I did not like using the D-pad for movement because I do that way more than using a mouse. Anyway, if you have your own software to set up your controller, you're set. A completely workable layout for how to make the game on your controller passable. But there are some key functions that are missing from this setup, and if you find them to be important enough, you might choose to replace some of the skills with these instead. First up, you have no way to summon or swap Eidolon. I couldn't reach the F keys comfortably to summon them before, so I just kinda got used to it being like this, and if I'm running and need to resummon my Eidolons, I just move the mouse and click it. This does not work for fast swapping Eidolons though. Number 2, you have no way to get on mount. You can still glide, as there is a shortcut where double tapping forward, which is up on your stick, while in the air will initiate the glide, then double tapping down will drop you where you are. But if you want to use a mount, you'll have to either click an autopath button on a quest, or switch to your keys. A workaround for this might be to make mount something like Ctrl F to use with the interact key, but as usual, I don't want to have to change the way I play with keys, so I personally just live without. And of course all the interfaces. It's a pain to move the mouse to the icons to open stuff up, like the backpack or guild or linking or eidolons, so I still do all of that with the mouse. It's a trade-off, and I've decided it's worth it for me. So, there you go. If you have your own software, you're set. Go make your layout and get your game on. But if you want to use Antimicro and want some help, well, let's talk about how to set it up. When you install Antimicro, it should register all the controllers you have plugged in. It registers my left-hand pad as a controller too. You might likewise see some other devices if you have peripherals like that. Check your tabs and find the one for the controller you want to set up. Mapping is easy enough. I just tap the button to see it light up, click on it, and then you can either input using your actual keyboard or click the key on the UI to map it. If you are struggling to get through with the buttons just numbered, you can use the controller mapping to have it read like an Xbox controller inside the program. Either way, for normal keys, super easy. Just click or tap on the key you want it to be and you're done. The sticks and D-pad are a little different. Depending on how it registers your controller, you will either get these little visual clusters or you will just get axis buttons. Antimicro has presets for WASD and arrow keys, so it's easy to set up what you want the axis to do, and I can set each axis independently, but you will still want to play with the dead zone, which is how far you need to tilt for it to count as a press, until it's comfortable. When even the slightest nudge counts, it feels wrong. I am using two different mouse control methods. The first one is the D-pad. I just use their default profile for mouse control with the D-pad, and then I fine-tuned the speed until I could easily and reliably make it to the buttons in-game. Because the buttons in-game are so thin, it's more comfortable for me with a slightly slower vertical speed than horizontal. If you struggle to hit buttons, you can also make the UI larger, but again, I am trying to avoid changing settings every time I pick up the controller, and I like the UI small, so I found this works for me. It's the mouse click and drag for controlling the camera that takes a little more setup. And I'm one of those weirdos who uses inverted controls for the Y-axis. So when I tilt my right stick down, I have it click and move the mouse up, which adjusts the angle of the camera to look higher. Because extra clicks can cause all sorts of mayhem if you're not careful, I have the dead zone set a lot higher than for the movement axis. Now, in terms of troubleshooting, I have had a few small issues with Antimicro. First off, if the game does not register the keys, make sure you run as an administrator. I have mine set to always launch as an administrator, but if you aren't running it in administrator mode, there will be a little warning on the bottom of the program you can click to relaunch it in the right mode. Second, occasionally, on launch, the controller will show as connected but not register any presses. To fix this, I just unplug and replug the controller. I don't know if this is unique to my specific HoriPad, but it's never been enough of an issue to look for another fix, and I just make sure that I'm using a USB port that is handy to make this easy. Third, occasionally, a key will get stuck virtually. Again, this might be an issue with my controller, but the fix for me is just unplug and replug again. And lastly, if suddenly nothing works, check to see what set you're on. Antimicro supports 8 sets per controller which you can flip between. Originally, I was making a different set for every class I played based on where the skills were on my skill bar at the time, but I got tired of it and started just changing the skill bars to match my controller setup instead. So now I only use set 4. Actually, I'm just going to overwrite set 1 so I don't have to remember to switch it anymore. And one final note, once you have a layout you like, export it as a backup. If you accidentally bork some settings and can't get them back, it's much easier to just have a backup file somewhere else. Ditto if you're moving PC or if you need to reinstall. Trying to reset the dead zones and mouse speeds takes patience. I lost it once and it took quite a while to get it good again. Anyway, if you, like me, spend too much time with your hands on keys and mice, and for ergonomic reasons think using a controller would take some pressure off your wrists, this should be everything you need to know to make it work in Aura Kingdom. It's not perfect, but it works. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I am not an expert in Antimicro by a long shot, but I can try to help if you're having issues. On the contrary, if you know more than me and have anything to add about the few issues I face, let me know. It would be nice to not worry about them anymore. But that's all for this time. Thanks for watching, and catch you later.